Welcome to my review of Squad 51 versus the Flying Saucers for the Switch. This one took me around 3 hours, 18 minutes to beat. This one may be on some other platforms, but I'm unsure about that. But I did play this in the actual Switch console. And I thought this would be a good one to cover because of the unique style of the game. Not only the visual style, which looks like an old movie, but the game, it has kind of a momentum-based handling, more realistic handling of your ship, and a large hitbox for your ship, you know what I mean? So it's kind of an unusual shooter. And by hitbox, I mean the area of your ship that can take damage, I think, is pretty much the whole ship, and your ship can be quite large. Some of them are really big. You actually use different ones as you progress through the campaign. There's certain pre-scripted ships that you'll use for certain levels. There's also an upgrade system where you can actually customize your loadout for specific areas and things like that. You can customize it to deal with certain areas, different bosses or stages and things like that. So sometimes you want to switch up your loadout. Now, a lot of the details on this game are going to be hazy because I beat this some time ago. This was a review that I had edited many months ago, but I just never added the commentary, so I figured I'd bang this shit out before it's not even a memory anymore. But as far as some of the smaller details, I'm a little hazy on that, but I may pick up on some of it as I watch this again. But I remember enjoying this game. I thought it was quite solid. It's not, it's not like a great all-time best shoot or anything like that, but it was just a fun playthrough and definitely something unique. You notice the handling, like I said, is a little bit more realistic in that when you move up and down, you kind of move at an angle up and down, and your shots, the trajectory of your shots actually goes with the movement of your plane, which is a little bit different. So it definitely has a different feel and a different atmosphere. The whole game is in black and white, and it's the filters that they used on it really make it look like an old fucking movie from like the 50s or something like that, like a sci-fi flick. And I believe the music and shit, represents that pretty well, though I vaguely remember that part of the game. Gameplay is always my main focus. But I remember there was some useful upgrades and things that you could kind of fuck around with in your loadout and switch up to get, an advantage over some boss fights and things like that. So it gave it some variety in the gameplay, trying to use different loadouts for different scenarios. I like that. You can't change everything on the fly, but I think it's pretty liberal with letting you go into the menu and change up your loadouts, maybe after each death, I'm not sure, or maybe at the beginning of the stage. I'm not sure when you can change your loadouts. I do remember the game having unlimited continues. If I had to guess, I'm thinking that the game will either start you back at the last checkpoint you got to, or you may have to start the stage over when you lose your lives. But, I don't remember how that part of the game worked. I do remember that if you lose a ship, like if you die, you'll respawn right where you died. I'm pretty sure that's how it works, but only a few times with the lives that you have on hand. And then when you go out to the continue screen, I'm not sure exactly where it's going to start you at that point. I don't remember the game being too punishing, though. I thought it was pretty forgiving. There were a few parts that were pretty challenging that took me some attempts to get through, but if you're experienced with shooters, then the default difficulty shouldn't be super hard. You may get stuck on a few parts. But I don't, nothing stood out as being too difficult. And some of the loadouts and things that you earn, I believe you earn them through XP or as you complete stages. But I think there's some kind of XP or currency system, and then you can buy your upgrades. You see, I got a checkpoint there. Now, if I had to guess, I'm guessing if you go out to the continue screen, I'm thinking you may just start back at the last stage checkpoint you got to with your default lives, 3 or so lives or whatever it is. And I'm guessing you can just continue from that point unlimited. Because like I said, I don't remember the game being too strict with death. But I remember some parts took me, quite a few attempts. The game itself is not too long from what I remember. I don't know if it's even an hour long if you don't die. It's a decent length though, but, I think it's kind of a typical length for these kind of shooters. But the visual style and the way it plays is quite unique. I believe you can also take a few hits in the upper left corner which says armor. I believe that's your health. You can see I'm using a really big plane here, so sometimes you got to pilot these really large planes. And the game is balanced well around that. They don't really have ridiculous bullet patterns and shit like that that you can't really fit through for the size of your plane. It's balanced well. But it can definitely be, more sluggish, which is part of the gameplay style, is that you have to, maneuver these kind of sluggish planes through these environments. So it's kind of an interesting style. Reminds me a little of In the Hunt, the old submarine shooter, whereas you're piloting a sluggish vehicle through some pretty insane circumstances. Though in this game, it's not insane difficulty-wise. Like that game can be very fucking hard. This is nothing like that. This is a pretty, easy to moderate difficulty shooter. But definitely an enjoyable one to play through. There's also some kind of bar, if you see it charging up. I think if you fill that up in the upper left corner, you may earn an extra life. So they do give you the ability to earn some of your lives back on the checkpoints, which can keep you alive. I think that's pretty useful. I also don't remember the different weapons that you have available and the power moves and all that shit. I think there is a power move that you get, like a screen clearing type of bomb that's in most of these shooters. I believe you can pick which one you want. So you can pick the proper special move for whatever situation you're in. I think that's how it works. Like I said, if I would have waited any longer to review this game, I might not remember it at all. So it is hazy. But you can see there's some camera angle switches and things like that. And the game just plays in a unique way. You don't really see too many games that try to have a realistic momentum type of movement in a shooter. You don't usually see those two things combined. So it's definitely unique. So after you beat a level, you get a little end screen that kind of shows you how you did, if you're playing for score or anything like that. And as always, I try to highlight some of the unique areas, interesting parts of the game in these reviews. Though I'm not a fan of that, fucking 50s style or whatever, I do think it's cool that they were able to match that in a shooter. They represented it very well. And, I enjoyed the game for what it was. I mean, aside from the strange-looking, bullets and shit like that, it could almost pass for some kind of video from the 50s, So you have, your usual mini bosses and shit like that appear in the stages, and then you'll have usually a major boss at the end of the stage. And some of those can go on for quite a while. They have multiple attack patterns, things like that. Can't remember if many of the bosses had multiple forms, but I think I remember the last boss having a few different forms, and some of the other ones may. But they definitely have multiple attack patterns and things to learn. And it can be tricky, because it's not your standard shooter that you're used to, with the movement and things like that. So it does take some adjusting to. You have to get a feel for how this particular game works. Sometimes items that are in the background, like buildings and shit, they could look like they're in the foreground where they could hit you. So some of that is just learning, trial and error. What can hit you, what can't. This boss was cool. This was one of the cooler bosses. I think this boss might have been pretty challenging, too, if I remember right. I like the way it looks, though, with the fire in the background. Very cool. Kind of has a stop-motion animation effect to the boss itself, which is pretty cool. Definitely fits the game. A lot of it is just positioning, knowing where to be when. Like with a lot of these games. I don't remember this game having any dense, crazy bullet patterns that you have to kind of squeeze through or anything like that too much. It's definitely not like your bullet hell shooters. It's has a lot more in common, something like R-Type or something like that, but it's not really in that style either. But there is a lot of, just knowing where to be when. And you don't really have to do crazy twitchy shit. It's just kind of like you just memorize what's coming up. And then you have a good general idea what to expect. The bosses definitely take a lot of damage to take down, and they don't have health bars, so you don't really know when they're going to die. It's kind of a surprise, similar to Cuphead. Though I think some of the bosses, as you damage them more, I think they have trigger points where they'll go into their next phase and stuff like that when you do a certain amount of damage. So you could use that as somewhat of an indicator. I believe that's in this game, but I'm really not sure at this point. It's been a little bit too long. But you can see this boss does a decent amount of different attacks. But yeah, some of the animation is very good, and the overall, presentation definitely fits. I think I show the full boss fight. You can see that these boss fights can be quite spongy and go on for a while. That's definitely the style of the game. So if you don't like long, kind of drawn out boss fights, then that could be an issue. But I mean, I enjoyed it even though the fights were long. They're not always super difficult, but some of them do go on for a while. Like I said, there's nothing really extreme on the default difficulty or anything like that. But you definitely have to learn the patterns because they go on for a while, so you could drain lives pretty quick. You can see that the maneuvering gets a little bit tight, but nothing crazy. You do have a little bit of leniency, I guess, with the hitbox, but it is pretty big. That's the challenge with a lot of these. A lot of these harder boss fights is just not getting hit by some stupid shit. Just because they go on for a while, so you don't have a lot of room to hit into shit. But most of them are cool fights. Definitely a unique game that you probably never heard of before. And, I think it's worth picking up at the price. I don't remember it being too expensive. For this boss, I think he just leaves. You don't actually kill him. So now this is the final boss. I like to show the final boss in a lot of these reviews of these older games. Or these older style type of games. Because it's usually a good indication of what you can expect difficulty-wise. I think the final boss took me several tries. I think it was, fairly challenging, but really not that difficult. But it was a cool fight. You can see I'm now driving some kind of futuristic-looking plane for this kind of, 50s version of the future anyway. Look like some fucking Uncle Fester looking motherfucker in the background. So yeah, this fight, I think it has multiple phases if I remember right. But I remember it being a cool fight. This particular ship, you see it fires forwards and backwards. Each ship is a little bit different. Some of them are slower. They move very sluggish and slow, and they're large. And other ones are, smaller but very fast. So you get different handling on the ships, too, which is kind of cool. It just does some unique things that you don't really see, which I really appreciated about the game. I like that it was doing some different shit, Because, pretty much it feels like everything has pretty much been done at this point in 2D shooters. Every little mechanic that you could come up with, it seems like someone's done it. If you play so many of these shooters, you see so many different ideas over the years. This is not doing anything fucking, super revolutionary or mind-blowing, but it is, small little tweaks to the formula that are cool. And it's just a fun game to play through if you like these kind of games. If you like beating games, and if you like a shooter that's not, if you're not looking for something that's like super fucking intense. It's a fun little one to play through. So this is one of my power moves, I think, that I equipped for this ship. And it's like a rear shot, like a rear flame or something. Or some sonic waves that do some good damage. And I think I picked it for this boss because, you do have to shoot from the back at a few points. So it gives you some extra damage while you're in that position. You can do some decent damage instead of doing less damage with the, single shot as you normally would. So that's one thing I like about the game, like I said, that you can customize your loadouts. And I think each ship gets some different special abilities and things that you can customize. Though I'm a little bit hazy on that part of it as far as the specifics of what each ship gets, or if they have unique attacks. I do remember them having unique attacks, though. So now after you beat this, I don't remember if there's an escape sequence here or if it just ends, but there's a cool little, scene at the end anyway. I think it might be a really simple escape sequence, Very fucking simple. You got to dodge a few obstacles, but still cool. Very cool presentation-wise. It seems like a lot of effort went into the visual style. It's actually quite a good-looking Switch game for a black and white 2D game. One of the better-looking 2D games on the Switch, you could say. Pretty detailed. Almost looks like I said, like an old movie. So yes, for me this game is a 7 out of 10. It's a good solid shooter. It's nothing spectacular, nothing great, but I think it's a good solid one to play through. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.